Welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast, where it's all about the transformational growth and having a resilient mindset. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Today, we have on the show a really good friend of mine. He's a dating and a relationship strategist, been through tons of adversities with his losing his job, having some relationship issues with his marriage, but he's here to talk to you guys about it. Let's welcome to the show my good friend, Mr. Scott McKay.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here, man. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Me too, man. Thank you for being on the show, man. I really appreciate it. I was looking forward to this because this guy here is a relationship strategist, and I've been married twice and divorced twice. So I was like, this guy got to give me some gems, got to give me some knowledge based off some things around relationships. And I know our listeners are really, really looking forward to this, man. So if you can, let's talk a little bit about. You said you hit rock bottom, and you had to you lost your dream job, but you were dealing with some relationship issues too as well. And I know that had to have been devastating. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, well, what happened was I was working pretty much for the best job a guy could possibly think of having in the IT sales world. And back when this all happened, it was about 2002, 2003, when the bubble happened and a lot of layoffs were going on. And so I thought I would retire from this company, get a pension, and I was gone. I was on the street. And about the same time, my wife served me with divorce papers. So I lost my dream job, lost my wife. She took my 2-year-old daughter with her when she left. And I was saying to myself, well, you know what? I'm going to have to still find some gratitude here. I still have my health, although barely. I still have life. And, the only thing you could do when you hit rock bottom is bounce upward. So I think what was key for me, Michael, was I decided not to be a victim. I didn't mope around saying, poor me. It was a split second where I looked in the mirror at age 35 and said, you're washed up and you're never going to have another girlfriend again. You'll never get another job like this one. And, this many years later, I kind of have to look back at all that and laugh, because had that adversity not happened to me back then, there would have been no doorway to cross through to get to where we all are now here in this family. And that's it really paid off. I'm an anti-victimhood agent, because I think everybody should take responsibility for themselves, their own success. And everybody goes through adversity. It's just a matter of how you deal with it.
Speaking of dealing with it, I wanted to ask you, how did you deal with it? And I'm saying that personally for myself. When I went through my first divorce, I handled it horribly. The first day that I got that letter in the mail, I went out with a friend. I went out partying, and I got a DUI that night. And it compounded on top of what just took place, to the point of went through a custody battle. That same DUI, my ex-wife used it in court against me. So how did you cope with it, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I didn't like that feeling of being a victim. And I had people around me saying, well, you know what, Scott, you couldn't have been a better husband. You couldn't have been a better father. We're really sorry that this happened to you. None of this was your fault. And see, when people tell you that, it just makes you feel like a bigger loser, because if you did everything right and still got kicked to the curb, well, then what does that say? That says that, you have 0% chance of success, even if you do your best. And I knew that wasn't true. So the first thing I did was figure out how I could do better. So when it came to women, which is pretty much our wheelhouse around here, is building our relationships up, men and women, getting better in their love lives and finding their love. I said, you know what? I'm going to do what I've been told is impossible. I'm going to figure women out. I'm going to figure out what makes them tick, how they think, how they feel, and what it is they want in a man. And then I'm going to do what it takes to become that guy. And I realized very quickly, Michael, there was a lot of mistakes I made in my first marriage that I could have done better with. I need to backtrack a little bit. My ex-wife, unfortunately, is clinically psychotic. I mean, she's been institutionalized. So she quite literally went crazy before my eyes. She was not the woman I married 7 years afterwards. And
wow,
she divorced me because of a lot of made up things. I mean, I know it's easy to say that, and it kind of feels reactive to have to say that. But I mean, she was saying things like when I say what I say, an example is she thought I had a whole fleet of satellites circumnavigating the globe, watching her in the shower and broadcasting it to the entire internet. That was one of the things she brought up during the divorce proceedings,
Are
which
you serious?
I tried to explain to her. I mean, this was my mistake. I tried to explain to her, look, if I had that broadcast capability, we would have satellite dishes and things like that. And she just didn't believe it. So that's one example of what led to this divorce was she was living in a reality that was not our own, to about the most extreme example you could think of. So when people said I couldn't have done any better, I was a model husband, model father, they were coming from a good place with that, but it didn't do me a hell of a whole lot of good. So how I coped with it was, say, first of all, I'm going to understand women. I'm going to become the guy that women want, and probably most of all, I'm going to stop attracting psychotic people into my life. I'm going to be very, very careful and deliberate about who is invited into my world. So
Right.
that's how I handled it.
So when it comes to relationships, I find sometimes people get into relationships or are attracted to people that they're in relationships with because of some things that may have stemmed from their childhood. So
Mm.
I noticed that sometimes some women will find guys that they're dating based off some things that may have been missing with their father, or different types of men that was involved in their lives. And sometimes the same thing attributed to men when it comes to women. When it comes to relationships and going through these types of things, it leads to some mental health type of issues and things like that. At any part after going through a divorce, did you have a breakdown or anything of that magnitude that led to you feeling mentally that or depressed, or anything that surrounded those types of things for you as a guy that just recently got divorced?
Well, I'll tell you, deciding not to be a victim was very powerful for me.
Hmm.
I had grown up, with some issues like lots of kids grow up with. And I felt like I'd overcome a lot of those social issues, like being an approval seeker, low self esteem, and things like that through my early adult life. And I certainly didn't want to regress into that. So I was very vigilant not to fall into that kind of trap because of the divorce. I will say that years on, other tragic events and things that have unfolded in my life have caused the symptoms of depression to sometimes creep in.
Hmm.
And I've got to get really good at recognizing that and doing battle against it instead of letting it get the best of me. But I think the simple answer is, knowing what some other people have gone through and the battles that have been waged on those fronts with other people. I think it would be rather arrogant of me to say that I've experienced anything close to that. I think I've been fortunate to retain my mental health throughout all this. And this isn't to pat myself on the back or anything. It's just that when you've seen such profound deprecation of someone's mental illness, it's the first thing you think of. It's the first thing you pay attention to in your own life going forward. And I've been very fortunate in that my wife of the last 17 years, Emily, is one of the most mentally stable people I know. And there's nobody I would rather have by my side through thick and thin than her. So we've been there for each other. And I think that's been a huge, huge factor in neither one of us degenerating in terms of our mental health, for sure.
Absolutely, man. When it comes to that process of what you was dealing with and going through, you mentioned that you lost your job, which
Mhm.
compounded on top of your circumstance and your situation. How were you able to deal with that, and how were you able to bounce back from that?
No, I went out and got another job. I mean, I just went out and hit the street. And, I just wouldn't say no. I mean, it took a while to get the next one lined up. And then over the course of the next couple few years, a lot of those same companies had the same problem. And that's what happened just a few years later. I looked in the mirror and said, you've been raised to be a worker bee. My dad always told me that, you'd have to have rocks in your head to go start your own company, because then you're on the hook for all the legal and all the insurance and all the paperwork and all the buck stops on your desk, just pick up a paycheck. But everybody had been telling me my entire professional life that I made a lousy employee because I wanted to run the place. And having worked for Lucent Technologies, which is literally Dilbert Incorporated, the idea of looking oneself in the mirror if one is displeased with management and their decision making appealed greatly to me, and it does to this day. If something's wrong with this company, I don't have anybody else to blame. I look in the mirror, and I think that has always been a big part of it for me, at least professionally.
I see. So you decided to dissect and research and learn about women. And you mentioned that you found the woman of your dreams, Emily.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what that process was like when identifying who and what person is going to fit the bill for what Scott likes, what Scott will fall in love with. How did you do that?
Well, first of all, the number one concern was I want someone sane. And, even to this day, I know female dating coaches out there who say all women are a little bit crazy. Maybe you've seen the iconic hot crazy matrix, where the guys talk about the hotter they are, the crazier they get. Well,
Right.
I can tell you that's fictional. That's not really true. There are plenty of sane people out there, men and women, some of them who are quite attractive. What I did was, first of all, I didn't jump right into another relationship.
Hmm.
I went out and just started socializing with women. I've always had one great feather in my cap, Michael, and that's I actually like female human beings. I actually adore women. And then I realized that if I actually like women and I'm not just focused on transactionally having sex with them or trying to get something from them, they'll like me back. Well, one of the things I found out about women is they follow a masculine lead, not because they're mindless or brain dead. That's just the dance of human sexuality. I mean, men literally lead dances and women follow. That's why women tend to be such good dancers more quickly, while all of us guys are still in the corner with two left feet still until we figure it out. So revelations like that came up. The idea of not being ashamed of being a man and of my masculinity, and that masculinity is meant to be virtuous, not toxic, drove me. And I found out that if I stuck to the women who actually were proud to have been born women and actually like men, I was meeting women who I was getting along with. And I got to the point where on first dates, I would announce to them, women always say, "What do you want?" Right? What are you looking for? I would tell them I want a woman who's mentally stable. And I was so codependent after my divorce, Michael, that I would cringe when I said that at the table the first couple of times, thinking they were going to get real angry and upset. And how dare you at me? But instead, I got an unexpected response that I should have expected, which is, "I'm so glad you said that because that shows me you're probably mentally stable and sane, which is what I'm looking for too." And I'm like, "Really?" And so the next thing you know, I started meeting women with just perfect personalities who were sweet, generous, giving. See, what happens is when you're an optimistic, generous person, people who are selfish look for you so they can prey upon you because they know the more they ask, the more you'll give. And when nothing's ever good enough, you'll just redouble your efforts. And literally, these selfish people who aren't relationship ready, of course, laugh themselves to the bank, all the way to the bank. Well, what ended up happening was, as a pretty optimistic, generous person myself, I started meeting optimistic, generous women and realized a lot of these women had gone through very toxic relationships with men who take advantage of them, and they felt terrible about it, and are trying to figure out where they went wrong, just like I was at first figuring out where I went wrong. But when I met them, I realized we were both relationship ready, and when two optimistic, generous people get together, it's a pretty good foundation to start a relationship. Now, see, my wife Emily right now, her ex literally was on the same medication my ex was on when I first met her. So it's
Wow.
like Spider-Man meme, like, "You're one of me." She was divorced for the same reason I was. And she's an indeed optimistic, generous person. And so, uh, to beat the haters and to beat the system, we've been pretty happily married for 17 years, very happily married for 17 years. And, that hasn't gone so well for either of our respective spouses. So that was the pattern. And let me tell you something. The confidence I got from putting this in motion and seeing the results was staggering. All my life, I'd been kind of afraid of women. I hadn't given myself a whole lot of credit for being able to attract them. I'm not very tall, Michael, and I'd always been told that short guys don't get women. And I just stopped believing all those messages and basically went out and put what I knew to the test. And I started showing up with wonderful, sweet, beautiful, sexy women. And my friends were like, "How are you doing that? How is, every week you're," and I was dating multiple women and just being casual and being social and just making friends with female human beings. And then things turned romantic, and that's okay. I didn't have to lie to any of them or trick any of them or use pickup lines on any of them. And the next thing you know, I was the one putting certain women in a just be friend zone and raising the bar. And the next thing you know, I had decided I was done dating, and I wanted to build a legacy and share the rest of my life with the right woman. And I found myself with 3 women, all of whom I could have been happily married to. And then I met Emily, and all 3 of those women were gone within 9 days. And it just was every day I was waking up. Who do you want to hang out with? Emily, 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 day after day. And it has still been that way. And I'm living proof that you can bounce back from a horrible divorce. And I know I'm on a roll, but I do want to say one more thing. There's this whole movement called men going their own way. MGTOW, guys, hashtag MGTOW. And they dominate men's dating advice on YouTube. The red pilled guys. We're going to tell you the truth about how women really are. They're all inside their brain and they just want to take you, and they're always looking for something better. That's all reactionist. That's not proactive masculinity. That's all victimhood. It's all defensiveness. What happens is when you really like women and you look for the red flags and you weed out the wrong women and you focus on being the right man for the right women, those women tend to rise to the surface. If you're a man who doesn't like women, you're afraid of women, it's garbage in, garbage out. You're not going to attract the women who actually like men because they're going to say no to that. They know better. Just like I know how to say no nowadays to a woman who doesn't like men. Those women have the same problem. They come to us and go, "Hey, all men are jerks. They're snakes. They're no darn good. They'll cheat on you. Can you find me a nice husband?" And the answer is no, not with that attitude. You see, so we're pro man, pro woman around here. We're equal opportunity, and that was just such a massive, revelation, because most people nowadays are just being trained by the media and by society not to like the other gender.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what lessons did you learn as you went through this transition, just dating phase? What did you learn about yourself? What did you start learning about women? And then for our listeners, what are some advice that you could give them based off of just going through that dating process?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I realized that I'm not so bad. I didn't listen to my ex-wife. I talked about those men going their own way. With the sheer terror my ex-wife put me through a crazy divorce process where quite literally the lawyers on both sides leveraged that to drain our bank account. I could have very easily become that guy. I could have said, never again. No woman is ever going to take advantage of me ever again. I am done. This isn't going to happen. I'm going my own way. Woohoo, right? But I didn't, because I love women and I wanted women in my life. So I made myself the difference. The difference that made the difference was how I handled it. So that's why my heart breaks. It goes out for these guys who have let one woman ruin their lives, or a woman who's let one man just jade her against all men in general. I would go out with those women and go, "Hey, excuse me, I'm not that guy. You might not believe that right now, but as you get to know me, a real version of me isn't going to jump out behind a bush and be this bad guy. I'm not going to do that. You can believe it or not. I know a lot of people have a hard time trusting, but what happened for me was I decided I like women. I want women in my life. I'm going to go out and do what I call deserving what I want. I'm going to become the kind of guy that the woman of my dreams is going to want in particular. And when I deserve her, I'm not going to settle for anyone less. That's a huge lesson. And then what happened was I just started hanging out with women without expectations. I wasn't trying to get in their pants. I wasn't trying to find a girlfriend, and I wasn't letting them lock me down either. I was simply getting reps. I was going out and meeting female human beings and putting everything I was learning and figuring out to the test, seeing what worked, seeing what wasn't working, and importantly, also fine tuning who it was I was looking for. I got to know myself better. I got to know who the hell I was. I became the man I wanted instead of feeling fake on the road to get there. That's why a lot of self help doesn't work, because people are like, well, I feel like I'm faking it till I make it. And of course, Western culture, it just eschews people who are fake, at least ostensibly. So no one wants to fake it till they make it because it feels, well, fake. But I saw who I was, and I wanted to become that guy, and I'm still doing that to this day, of course. But I think that's extremely important. And then, when women had red flags, when they showed themselves to be crazy or selfish or whatever it was, I was true to myself and I was very kind to them. But I told them I just don't think we're a match. And the next thing you know, once I started having options, once I met two women who I thought were beautiful and amazing, it became a lot easier to meet more because I wasn't afraid of the rejection. I wasn't unsure of myself anymore. So all that was part of the process. And then I just got to the point where I was done dating and wanted one great woman in my life again. I mean, someone else's mileage may vary, but I think most people get to that point, even if they're not at that point right after they break up or go through a divorce or when they're young.
So now that you are in the space of dating and relationship strategists, and you're encountering so many different types of personalities, behavior, let's talk a little bit about what does that look like when you're coaching or when you're speaking to people. Are you coaching people through, or are you vetting people through a process, or are you doing like matchmaking? What is that like for you in your profession?
Well, what typically happens is the men and women who come to us are smart people. They're good hearted people. They just don't have the right person in their life to spend all their goodness with or to match up with. They
Hmm.
may have a broken picker. They may have come out of a toxic relationship in their own right. We don't get a whole lot of men who are these pickup artists who are just trying to get laid. We don't get a whole lot of men who hate women. We don't get a lot of women who hate men. As a matter of fact, the MGTOW guys I spoke of, they don't like me. They troll me. They want me gone because I represent the antidote to what their message is. They
Uh-huh.
need me not to exist. They want me to be a unicorn, but I'm not. There are lots of happy people out there in great relationships, men and women together. And the people who want that in their lives are the ones who come to me, not because they're basket cases, not because they're newbies. Um, I've always kind of said if this were a driving school, because I'm a car guy, it'd be more like Bob Bondurant racing school, not the 16-year-old, driving school that you send your kid to when they have a learner's permit to learn how to parallel park. I don't get a whole lot of beginners. It's mostly people who are sick and tired of not having this part of their life handled who come to me. And we don't have a cookie cutter program we put everybody through. What we do is we do an entire, if you do coaching with Emily and I, and we're a team, what happens is you go through a questionnaire and a planning process. When we put an outline together that's uniquely yours, and then we follow it, and then you can call us whenever anything tactical comes up.
I see.
Lot, yeah. So that's how it works. Also have lots of downloadable info products, of course, the podcasts, lots of free things to get started. We have something for everybody in that front.
So, what would you say are some of the key components to having a successful relationship?
Yeah,
I asked that because, like I said, married twice, divorced twice. I remarried my wife that I had my second divorce with, and we spent 2 years of just reconnecting, counseling, a whole bunch of things that we knew that we messed up during the first go round. So, what would you say are some of the key components when it comes to dating, getting into a relationship? And to add to that point, you're now married now for over 17 years. So
yeah.
what is it that you can share and talk to us about?
Okay. Well, First of all, you knew full well when you got back with your second wife, you couldn't have the same relationship with her you had the first time around. It had to be different. And I think that's unique for people, but here's some of the themes that come up. I've already mentioned that if you don't even like the gender you're trying to attract, you've already stacked the deck against yourself. Okay. Second of all, people who are very selfish and don't want to give don't understand that you have to give to get in a relationship. I think even society is fostering this notion that, hey, go get a partner so they can meet your needs and give you what you want, and that's just a recipe for disaster. You got to stop seeing. If you're a man, you got to stop seeing women as adversaries and start seeing them as partners, and vice versa. And by the way, this goes for gay or straight relationships, actually, all of this. Um, if you're the type of person who has been jaded and who feels like a victim, you got to get over that mindset and realize that not every person is the person who hurt you. You've got to give people a chance. I understand the point. You don't want to just blindly trust people up front, but you have to give people a chance. You can't just shut people out. For men, you can't be focused on just getting laid. There's a real human being there who wants connection. Women, you can't just find a rich guy and have him buy you stuff. Again, he wants to be seen as a human being. And I think a lot of things also center around the understanding of masculine, feminine attraction and how it works. I think we've been told, I know we've been told that that's all a social construct. Matter
Yeah.
of fact, it's designed to attack either men or women, depending on the perspective, but really it's all very natural and very primal. I mean, if you consider sexuality as a physical act, that would be pretty shallow. So, what is the psychosocial component of sex? It is masculine, feminine polarity. So,
Mhm.
men want to provide and protect and be a hero and be appreciated for it. Women want a man to hold her, tell her everything's going to be okay, and be believable so that she can, in turn, bring joy, fun, play into the world, which women love to do, but they need to be freed up to do it. And who are the benefactors of all that joy, fun, play, and comfort? It's us, of course.
Right.
That's how the circle of life works in terms of male female attraction. And what those factors do is make us horny for each other. And I think when we stop fighting that and start embracing that and don't see it as such a bad thing. I had a guest on my show who's literally being canceled for making that his number one priority, to the point it's like, why are y'all women trying to go get jobs and be so powerful at the expense of being mothers, expense of bringing wives, being bringing children into the world, which is blessed and holy and keeps the whole world spinning for the next, beyond the next 100 years. It's the whole secret to our survival as a human race. He's getting canceled for that, when most people still want that to be the case. I mean, my wife can have a great job, have lots of ambition, do wonderful things. We're raising our daughters to be gritty and strong and confident, but none of that has to do with this masculine feminine dance.
Right.
Makes us attractive to each other and causes us to operate in partnership with each other. And that those are the messages. The last one would be, hey, look, get out there. Just be social. Don't feel like you have to work on yourself and lose 20 pounds or get a job, or I have to stop crying over Ben and Jerry's at night. Look, there's all these timeline based bits of advice out there like, oh, wait a year before you start dating after a divorce. Wait a year exactly. I mean, on 366, day 366, you go out on a date. I mean, all you're doing is waiting a year to feel more sorry for yourself in many
Right.
cases. Go out there and be social. You don't have to get into a relationship. You don't have to have sex. That goes for men, women, gay or straight. You can go out there and be social and make this the beginning of your forward motion. It's a cliche to make this the first day of the rest of your life, right? But that's kind of what I did. I was like, I can't sit here and wallow in this. I've got to move forward and see where it goes. And then you got to give yourself a chance. And I think that's where a lot of people have to really make a decision. They have to take that first step. And that involves being brave and overcoming some fear. And I understand that. I know it firsthand.
Do you believe that when most people are getting into relationships and they're getting into it, right? Are they getting into it with fear, hesitation? And in addition to that, do you think people take into relationships some of the influences or stresses that comes from like social media where they have to follow certain things? Or
Yeah.
do you feel like they're taking into a relationship what mom and dad said as a kid? This is what you need to be. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to act in a relationship. Because based off what you said, like these are things that I hear friends say, like you need some time to yourself. You need to take a break. Or if you go on social media, then you got to go for this person that looks this way and has this body and these types of things.
Yeah.
So do you believe any of these things are any contributing factors when it comes to some of your clients that you deal with, or just in relationships in general overall?
Well, for the first half of what you said, I think it's all true. I mean, societal factors, experience, how you were raised, what was modeled for you in terms of relationships and your upbringing, all that's going to affect you. And I think the more we realize and accept that, I mean, knowledge is power. A lot of people go through this blindly. A lot of people don't even understand what masculinity and femininity even are. They don't understand how they've been affected. They've been taught, don't give to anybody else, don't trust anybody else, be selfish. And this is from people whose relationships haven't gone very well for them. So I think if you know all of that coming in and you accept that you have all these influences coming in, then when you get into a relationship with someone else, then you can be open to that and you can realize that and maybe listen more instead of talking more when you're in a relationship with someone new like that. Um, you also mentioned that people will tell you to take a break. I mean, first of all, I don't take advice from people who are miserable. I'm not going to take advice from someone who hasn't succeeded. You got to walk the talk. I think when men and women get together and they're optimistic and generous, and also, this is important, they get each other. They know what's going on in each other's heads. I think that's the three-legged stool, the trifecta that holds up a good, that portends a great relationship. Michael, I get people come to me and go, "Hey, my wife of 6 years said this to me last night. What did she mean by that?" And I always give them the same answer. I don't know. Did you ask her? And they're like, "Oh, go!" Like Bart Simpson. I can't do that. Well, why not? Because you don't have a connection with her. My wife and I know couples who don't even like each other. They never liked each other. They felt desperate to get married. The biological clock was ticking, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, I think you kind of asked this question indirectly, but lots of people get married for all the wrong reasons. There shouldn't be a pressure to get married just to be married. That's the wrong reason. Anything transactional, I mean, I suppose if two people are okay with the transactional nature of their relationship and that's how they connect, I mean, I guess, but it's not a model marriage. It's not love. It's not connection. It's not fulfilling. But man, the power of people actually understanding each other. Like you meet a woman and you just know what's going on in her head. She thinks the way you do. She believes the way you do. You have areas where you're just flat out, straight up compatible. You think the same way, vote the same way, pray the same way, spend money the same way. And a lot of times, if you're congruent and your worldview is consistent, you'll meet women who are equally consistent. When you're just doing what someone told you to believe and none of it's consistent, well, don't be surprised when you can't find someone you understand, because they're probably not out there. But once you know yourself, then you know who you're looking for a whole lot better. And when you're honest about it and you're not trying to pretend and you realize that you are the right person for someone else, you'll find that person who's right for you. A lot of people on Twitter and Facebook there's a lot of hate out there. If you are like this, if you look like this, if you pray like this, if you vote like this, you're unlovable. You're doomed. But if you meet someone who looks like you and prays like you and votes like you, they're going to vehemently disagree with the person who doesn't like you because they're different. There's a lot of fear, and a lot of that fear drives just hate. And Michael, I think this podcast is a testament to it. People just need to get out there and talk to each other and realize we're all human. We're just trying to make our way, and we all just want to get along.
Most
And it's the
definitely.
people who've been knocked down. It's the people who have a passport and have seen what the rest of the world is like. It's the people who've gone out there and realized everybody around the world has more in common than we have differences, regardless of who their government is. Those are the people who gain a little humility along with their insight, and they really want to make the world a better place for everybody. And I think one of the best places to start is with the relationship with the women you're out there meeting. And I said women, even when you're dating, I want that to be the case. I don't want to use anybody. I had women thank me after I broke up with them for being good with them. I mean, I realized we're not probably right for each other. I had one woman, bless her heart, she says, I'd love to lock you down and keep you forever, although I know there's no way in hell. That's what she said to me. And at that point, you have to kind of have the conversation, like what's best way to proceed. Because, we had a lot of affection for each other. We were fundamentally incompatible. So, there's a lot to think about here, but I think most people just need to be honest about who they are, who they're looking for, and then stick to that and not let the haters derail them. Because you try to please everybody, you please nobody. And I don't think you have to please everybody to find the woman or man of your dreams.
I like exactly what you just said, because I thought about why I got married the first time. And then I was looking at some of the numbers around divorce rate a couple of years ago, and some of the things that outside of physical abuse and those types of things in a relationship.
Yeah.
But I've seen it where people would get divorced after the kids are gone off to college. I'll see I'll see people get divorced because of they had a misunderstanding based off of something that they never discussed before they got married.
Yeah.
Right. So if you could help some of our listeners that are thinking about getting married and are married, what are some of the communicational things that needs to be discussed, needs to be halved when getting into a relationship, and just in that dating phase? What are some things that needs to be talked about? What are some things that needs to be discussed to avoid getting into situations around divorce? And I say that based off what I just talked about and some of the things that I know you probably have already shared already.
Well, in a big way, you just answered your own question. I think a lot of couples are afraid to talk because they're afraid of this dark, looming deal breaker that if they actually found out would kill their relationship when they're desperate for that relationship to work.
Right.
Man, I call it being clouded by beauty vision. I mean, this is the hottest girl I've ever dated. She has to stay perfect. I don't want to risk that by talking about anything deep with her. I had a couple come to us. They had been dating for 16 months, a year and 4 months, and they were deciding to buy a house together. But they ran into a roadblock because she wanted 10 kids and he didn't want to bring another soul into this godforsaken world. And I'm like, 16 months in, buying a house, you just now figured this out, right? And my wife and I went about another 3 minutes into this conversation, and I said to him, they weren't buying a house yet, by the way. They were thinking about it. I said, I have a very hard question for you, and it could get ugly. I need your permission to ask it. He goes, no, anything. I want to know what's going on here. I go, what's her last name? He couldn't tell me. After 16 months.
Wow.
Now, see, that's fear. That's a fear-based poverty mindset. If I lose this woman, I'll never get another one. What happened was they Netflixed and chill on their first date. Second date, Netflix and chill. Third date, Netflix and chill. They've been sitting in front of a TV set for 16 months playing kissy face. They never asked each other anything. So you have to know who you are. You have to realize you're not going to have a happy relationship with someone you don't even get along with. And you don't know if you get along with them until you know whether you get each other or not. Mm-hmm. Here's the one thing I haven't said yet that would probably add the most to a proper answer to your question. Look, we know red flags when we see them. We just ignore them and hope they'll go away. If I look back, I knew I shouldn't have married my first wife. I knew it, but I did it anyway. Why? Because I didn't have a whole lot of options. Why didn't I have a whole lot of options? Because I hadn't figured out who I was, figured out how women are, figured out how to attract them, and realized I really could attract some better women. Now, that's a pretty harsh thing to say about your ex-wife. She ruined my life. She's not relationship ready. So I have no qualms about saying that. I mean, she's a human being who deserves respect. She's one of God's children like the rest of us. But that doesn't mean I should have married her. Period. And I came up with excuses. You know what? I painted myself in a corner, so I had to marry her. We bought 2 cars together and put them both in my name, and I needed her income to pay for them. So I couldn't break up with her. That's what I told myself. What a tangled web we weave. Man, my Lord. And I mean, and that to me sounds not just immature, but just frankly very stupid for a guy like me who got such a high IQ score. So why did I do that? I did it because of what I felt, not what I thought. I felt lonely. I felt like this was my chance. I lied to myself. And I think most of us, if we stop lying to ourselves and we're honest, we know the red flags. Well, you know, he's been in jail for assaulting people, and he's got a drug problem, and he's got a $30,000 a month gambling habit, but I love him. Don't come to me a year later when your marriage falls apart thinking you never saw it coming. This is routine. If you go out with a woman and she doesn't make any sense on the first date, it's not like she's going to start making sense and not be so psychotic on the second date. Hey, I have guys who come to me and they're asking about writing a woman online. They haven't even gotten through her profile yet. And Michael, by God, she's already pissing them off. Well, it really makes me mad when she says this and that. Why are you writing her that? It's not going to get better when you meet her in real life. No. So a lot of this is common sense, but common sense isn't so common when we let romance and our hormones get in the way.
So, man, you're speaking to the choir, bro. So I'm just hearing myself in your explanation as when I was younger, man.
Oh, me too, man. Listen, you said I'm preaching to the choir. I don't want to preach. Okay. I am a beggar helping another beggar figure out how to find bread. That's what I am. That I'm just passing along what worked for me. Yeah, for sure. And you know, I got to be honest with you. I am like the most down to earth, non-pedestal, ivory tower dating coach out there. A lot of these people, I mean, I've had coaches, you know, business coaches tell me, no, you need to be less accessible and you need to act more famous. We were all internet famous back in the aughts and the early, 2010, 11, 12, because, you know, the whole Facebook, Instagram influencer thing hadn't happened yet. And there were millions of them. Everybody in the meet women space, all of us dating coaches, we were kind of internet famous. I mean, it still didn't do anything for me. You know, I put my pant legs on one at a time like everybody else. I mean, I was a guy who went through crap and figured out how to fix it. And I just want to help other people. And I mean, that's really who's left standing nowadays because, you know, the whole internet famous part of being a men's dating coach is long since evaporated. And the people who are left are the people here because they love doing what they do and they're motivated and impassioned by it.
Why do we or people in general put blinders up whenever red flags pop up? You
Because
know,
we're lonely and desperate. Oh my goodness, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be dateless again and I'll have to go and start all over again and it'll take forever. I could teach guys how to find another woman an hour from now if they work for me. An hour from now, you'll have another woman in your life if you do online dating and apps right.
I also want to ask you this. You shared something that is not very common. When someone breaks up with someone, they happily go their own separate ways.
Mhm.
For the most part, whenever I've seen that, there's always been some disgruntledness, then some angriness or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
What does it take to have that conversation with someone whenever you choose to break up?
Respect. Listen, I wrote a book on this. And if you think of this as two matrices, okay, a lot of people are, when they think of how to deal with breakups, they're like, how do I get this person who broke up with me back? There was never a book on how to handle having to break up with someone, right? And I think a part of that is because the people who are biggest consumers of dating advice are people who don't have the answers yet and don't have the success yet to have to deal with that. But the two matrices are how long you've known them and how well they treated you. Okay. Listen, if I'm having coffee with a woman I met on Match.com and I've known her for 10 minutes and she's already psychotic or mean to me, thank you. Have a nice day. I have no need to invent reasons why what's happening right before my very eyes isn't happening. Okay. If I've known her for a coffee date or 2 dates and she's been sweet and nice, she just doesn't do it for me, I'll have to say something like, you're really very nice and very sweet. I just think there's another guy out there who's going to appreciate you more than I do. And you should meet him. Right. If there's someone who you've known for a while and they're starting to treat you miserably, you may need to take a very firm stance, realize you've been done wrong and you've been played and you've been gamed and you've been manipulated, and not let yourself fall into the bad habits again. And you need to stand your ground and not let them lure you back. The hardest one is when there's someone who's very sweet and nice to you and you've known them for a long time and you realize we're never going to be a match. We're never going to get married. And that's when you have to be extra careful and extra nice to them, extra sweet to them. And I'm not, I know I've realized there's this whole stigma against being Mr. Nice Guy. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mr. Nice Guy is not attractive to women. That's another whole podcast. But you have to be good and you have to be respectful to people you've been dating for a while who weren't right for you. And then I think you have to lay that down very logically why you're not going to have a future together. And she'll say things like, you could love me if you wanted to, things like that. And you have to say, well, this isn't up for debate. This isn't going to continue. And then they're going to try desperately to get you back. And you can't if you know what's right. And, when someone knows this isn't a long-term match, they're almost always right. And the other person is the one who's living in fantasy land or who's a little bit more needy in the relationship. One of the unfortunate truths in life is whoever wants the relationship less is in control. A lot of times people talk about chasing after people and you should choose them instead or make them chase you for a change. I think two people who choose each other from many options are the ones who are best off. And that's what describes my wife and I. So hopefully that answers your question. Because
That does. I wanted to follow up on the keys of communication. And I wanted to address this more so, I would say, with the younger generation when it comes to dating. And I say that, so I see kids nowadays are text messaging or they're DMing and getting into relationships through text message and holding conversations through through that through that channel. And then when it comes to interacting face to face, they don't know how to communicate.
It's true.
What is your thoughts, or what are your thoughts around that when it comes to dating and relationships, when we could see the younger generation is using that means right now, and us as adults seeing how relationships go, as you need to communicate, you need to be compatible, you need to have that type of dialogue in a relationship based off all the things that you're talking about and you're teaching.
Well, first and foremost, let's get foundational with this.
Okay.
Right. People talk about how important communication is to a relationship. Well, good communication is a symptom of connection. Communication happens when you're connecting. When you take two people, like they go to marriage counseling because they have no idea who the other person is, don't trust each other, don't know what's going on in each other's heads, nor do they care. And the Pollyanna-ish counselor says, well, the two of you just need to learn how to communicate. Well, I mean, that's trying to build a house without a foundation, is what that is. Now, to the more pressing current issue of people sitting around the table at Denny's together when they're supposed to be socialized, but everybody's got their nose buried in their smartphone. That's a real problem. We don't know how to be social anymore, and COVID certainly didn't help. I mean, I think most people really liked being locked down. It exonerated them from having to be social. We get on Twitter, we get on Facebook, we type something at someone we actually really don't know in real life, and we feel like we've kind of done our duty. We paid our dues socially, and we don't have to do anything else. People were meeting over Zoom during COVID and not actually meeting in person. And when the all clear was sounded and we could go out and meet each other, they still didn't. For about that first year after the world started opening up again, probably about a year and a half ago,
Right.
people still were very rusty socially. Did you notice that? They were still kind of cold. They're kind of a little cranky, a little scared. And then what happened is something wonderful happened about 6 months ago. As we record this, probably the beginning of 2023, is people just became starved for human interaction.
Yeah.
And it became more friendly to talk to people out in the real world. Now, for some reason, the media is against this. They still want to tell you everybody's going to push you in front of a subway and rob you at gunpoint. That's not everybody in the world everywhere. I mean, you stay out of bad neighborhoods, obviously. And you know, I have neighbors who just moved here from Iran. And they were almost amazed that I wanted to be friends with them, and I was so fascinated by their culture. But see, I've been to 110 countries in the world, and Iran's at the top of my bucket list. And I know from my travels that a government and the people who live there are not synonymous. And they're the sweetest, nicest people, because people from Iran tend to be the friendliest people on earth, according to people who've been there and been to a bunch of other countries. And you know, that's wonderful. They're human. They're very nice, sweet people. I'm so glad to meet them. And what happens now is I think the media is being told, oh, well, if they're this color, or they pray this way, or God forbid they vote this way, they're all horrible. Don't talk to them. That's not the real world. That's not the real world. And now people, the dangerous part to those who want to be in control and pull the strings in government is that people are starting to realize that. Again, people are starting to realize, hey, you know what? The enemy to America is its fellow Americans. We have more in common. And even the people who are elsewhere in the world aren't our enemies. It's just the governments have to work all this stuff out together. So we got a situation now to kind of culminate my answer. The culmination of my answer to you is, I've said this on lots of podcasts with lots of different guests, and we've kind of come to the same agreement. The new school way for men to meet and interact with each other is the old school way to meet and interact. The apps, the dating advices, the Twitter, the Facebook, all the fake electronic driven drivel. You just say drivel instead of driven, electronic drivel. Being told what to think by echo chambers on Facebook and on Twitter about men, women, and anything else that comes at us. People are starting to learn they need to think for themselves again, go out and interact with real people again. And when men and women have the balls to go out and meet each other in public, talk, start conversations instead of being afraid of each other, that's when we'll start having real relationships again. I got a second chance. I've had all 4 of my closest neighbors in proximity move out and new people move in probably in the last year. Okay. This time I went out and met all my neighbors. The one lady's over here. I've known her for years. She's wonderful. But now I met all my neighbors, and I'm a better guy because I did it. I even fell into the trap. I don't even know who lives next to me. All my best friends live in California and Europe and do what I do for a living. And I talk to them on Zoom and on email. Some of them I've never met in real life. That's got to change. We've got to become a village again. We've got to meet the people around us. We've got to interact with humans. And I think when men and women start actually looking each other in the eye, sitting across the table from each other and getting to know each other the way we've done for millennia instead of the way we've done since 2008, that's when we affect change. And you know what, Michael? It starts with me. It starts with you. It starts with us setting the example. Men lead. Let's go do it.
Definitely, man. You just spoke about your second chance, and I know what my second chance looked like. When
Well, that
you,
was kind of a little microcosmic second chance of just, I didn't know the neighbors who moved out that well. I made a decision because I was confronted with it. But yeah, that's a little second chance, but sure.
I got you. When it came that opportunity with Emily, what helped keep your relationship together? What were you guys doing to nurture that relationship to make it last 17 years strong? Was it counseling? Was it your network of family and friends supporting you guys? Was it what was some of those key things that was important and integral to the support factor of you guys sticking together and having a harmonious type of family?
Well, certainly wasn't counseling.
Okay.
It certainly wasn't our network of family. I think it was, first of all, you know what? I sound like a broken record, and I don't want to. If we need to move on to something else because you don't like my answer, let's do that. But we both knew who the hell were, and therefore we both knew who the hell we were looking for. So when we met each other, we recognized each other. It was pretty simple. I could have walked down the aisle with her irresponsibly quickly and have made the right decision. I just knew. I had dated so many women. She had dated so many guys. I just knew that's the one. But we spent time. We spent 9 months. I mean, we met on a Saturday morning. We didn't see each other the following Monday. And then we never missed a day seeing each other probably for the next 2 years. She finally went on a trip to go see relatives and left me behind for 3 days. I was beside myself. I mean, to this day, during COVID, people were like, wow, how can we're going nuts sitting next to each other all day locked down. How can you and Emily stand being with each other? Well, we've been in this office together for 17 years. I mean, when that little chick leaves for 5 hours with the kids and goes, does some homeschool co-op or something, I miss them terribly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a deal where, are we partners? Are we in this together? Are our lives both better because the other one's in it? And plus, I'm just absolutely so hot for her. I just think she's the cutest, sweetest, sexiest thing I've ever seen. I didn't settle for her. To this day, I got 23-year-old guys who chat my wife up, but she's going to turn 52 next month. I mean, it's just, I did well. You know what I mean? And it's all about, we know who we are. So we recognize someone when they were right for us. We didn't play games. We made a decision to choose each other from many possible options and having vetted all the other options.
So as we get ready to close out here, Scott, I listened to your story, and quite a few things resonated with me in regards to like learning from you, from my own story too, as well, from my past. For our listeners that's listening, if you could recap for us some of your life lessons, some of the key takeaways that you would like for them to just impart into their lives, or just use as they go along in their soon-to-be relationships, current relationships, or anything of that magnitude. Can you leave us with some lessons?
Yeah, for sure, man. First of all, we don't coach perfect people because we're not perfect people. If there's anything I can't stand is people get up there like gurus pretending to be all perfect and have all the answers, because it may be attractive, but it's just not realistic.
Right.
Emily and I have had our hearts broken. We've had adversity happen while we're married that we don't have time to talk about here, but is profound. We have not lived charmed lives. We've just simply been there with each other when those things happened. And when you come to us, you don't have to be perfect. We're not going to hold our yardstick up to yours. We're not even going to ask you to live the same kind of life we live. Plenty of people come to us and their goals are completely different. But you know what? We believe in your future. We believe in your greatness. We believe you can overcome the adversity. It isn't just a pity party. You don't come to us because you want to rent a friend, okay? You come to us because you see a better version of your own future, your own life, and we stand in the gap with you to make it happen, because that's what we did. We walked the talk. We've been at this for so many years. Michael, we know what we're seeing. We've seen everything, okay? You can't shock us. You can't embarrass us. You got a horror story that you're ashamed to tell us. I bet you we can have one to share right back. Not like it's not like we're playing can you top this, but believe me, we're not perfect people.
Mm-hmm.
But what everybody has in common when they come to us is that they don't want to be a victim. They're sick of the pattern of failure. They want to break that pattern of failure and move on to something that's going to succeed for them and get them better results. Those are the people who come to us. And like I said, we have free ways to interact with us. We have downloadable programs that change lives. And so far as being on site, one-on-one coaches, or even remote, we're among the best in the world at what we do, because we've been there, we've walked the talk, we've seen it all, and we've had lasting power doing this. And we love what we do, and we're good at it. For men, what I would recommend is simply go to mountaintoppodcast.com and download and listen to the podcast. Get acquainted with how we flow around here and see if we're your cup of tea. I think, I've tried to be pretty honest for about the last hour and real and authentic. And I think if you're resonating with it so far, I think we'll be all good. If you're a woman, we have a podcast called X and Y on the Fly that I do with my wife. And you can go to scottandemily.com/podcast and check that out. And I spell my name with one T, SCOT.
Well, Scott, man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story about losing your job, going through a divorce. But obviously, coming from rock bottom, man, you have successfully navigated your way to getting back on top, and now you're out here helping people with relationship. And I just want to applaud you for that, man. Thank you so much for coming on here, man.
Thanks, man. That's the best part of it, is helping other people and making the world a better place. Thank you so much, man. Great show. Time flew.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. Until next time, guys, we're out here. Peace. We love you.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.